Now, speaking of ADRs, I want to look at Alibaba. Just in the last couple of days, since the de-escalation of the tariffs, it's seen a surge in terms of orders from U.S. buyers. Now, in terms of Alibaba, we got a revenue miss on the latest report card. Talk us through what you're seeing from the company, its strategy on AI, and of course, its focus on e-commerce.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the aggregate numbers. I mean, 7% revenue growth. I was very much rooting that Alibaba for their fiscal year almost hit $1 trillion RMB in revenue. They came in at 996. So it's a little disappointing they didn't hit that 1 trillion number. But at the same time, the numbers themselves were light versus analyst expectations. You saw a real contraction in terms of cash. I mean, they have 50 billion US of cash on the books, and yet that cash flow is really diminished due to their investment in AI, the capex there, as well as some of the consumer businesses. The aggregate numbers weren't terribly disappointing. Very corporate friendly, investor friendly in terms of the buyback. As well as this $2 US dividend that will be paid out. So I think there's a lot of positives, but it was a little bit mixed. Again, the stock was up going into earnings 58% year to date. So that even slight miss really caused this profit taking. And again, I would contrast it with someone like NetEase, who beat on all of the analysts' expectations, and you saw a significant surge there. So again, it lends itself, it's self-serving and highly biased. Why we like the diversified approach as much as we love Alibaba. I don't think anyone would ever expect to see NetEase outperforming.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of activity in the IPO space. I won't ask you about Ant International because I want to ask about Contemporary Amprex. $263 is the price for the stock. It's going to be the world's biggest, landing in Hong Kong next Tuesday. We're seeing this pickup in listing activity, companies coming to the Hong Kong market. What is your expectations for CATL when it comes online?
I mean, we're a big believer and investors in CATL in our global EV strategy. It's just a phenomenal. It's a must-own company in my opinion, along with BYD for investors in the space. And I think what I think of this positive path on U.S.-China relations. Remember, CATL's CEO back in December, they actually publicly stated that they had offered to build a battery plant in the United States, and the Biden administration turned them down. I mean, isn't bringing it back exactly what the Trump administration wants? So I think it's something that no one's really talking about. But imagine CATL building a battery plant in the United States. That could actually happen under the Trump administration, in my opinion, something that's, again, underrepresented markets. But in general, if you look at volumes in Hong Kong, they've really increased over the last year. You're seeing a very, very full calendar for investment bankers. And I think companies like JD doing a dual primary listing, I think that's going to happen this year. I think you're going to see Ant. I think you might even see Bytedance. So it's been a very difficult 3 years, 21, 22, and 23 for investors like us in Chinese equities, but also traders and investment bankers. And I think there's better days ahead of us. I mean, I'm an optimist by nature, but again, investment bankers are going to get really busy in Hong Kong.
Well, I heard that the bankers on the CATL deal are not getting paid as much as they usually would. But I'll leave that for another discussion. Fundraising during a trade war and some of the investment uncertainties brought on by all of the Trump policies. How is that affecting in terms of the IPO space, of all the IPOs, some of the names that you had just mentioned earlier, and of course, Contemporary Amprex next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, this is the stages of the art of the deal start with a very hard negotiating tactic. We saw that with Liberation Day. The next stage is chaos, that by acting irrationally, rational people don't know how to react. And now you're seeing the final stage, which is actually negotiation, actually doing the deal. So I think one, we as investors have to remember Donald Trump is a business person. He wants to see deals done. I think that's where you're seeing actually several U.S. investment banks are participating in the CATL deal. And again, this is a must-own company for investors globally. Obviously, we've been investors for a long time in the Shenzhen listing, but obviously this access will allow the Hong Kong listing potentially to be added to MSCI indices down the road. So again, this re-rating of China is somewhat driven by, I think, the thawing of U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but again, also the vibrancy of capital markets, the rebound we're seeing in Hong Kong as well.